You ever notice how the night feels different when you're the only one there? Not just quiet, not just dark. There's something else. Something that sits at the edge of your awareness and makes every small sound feel like a question you're not sure you want answered. Most people go home before they ever find out what the night actually holds in those empty buildings, those deserted parking structures, those long corridors that stretch on forever under flickering fluorescent lights. But some people don't get to go home. Some people are the ones who stay. Tonight, we have 4 stories from real people who were working alone at night when something happened that they still can't explain. These aren't ghost stories told around a campfire. These are accounts from security guards, warehouse workers, cleaners, and late-night employees who went to work expecting a normal shift and ended up with something they've been carrying ever since. Stay with me until the end, because the 4th story is the one that genuinely disturbed me the most when I read it. There's a detail in that final account that I haven't been able to shake, and I think you're going to feel the same way. Let's get into it. Marcus had been working overnight security at a commercial warehouse on the outskirts of a small Ohio town for about 7 months when this happened. He described himself as a practical guy, former military, 2 tours overseas, not someone who's scared easily. He'd worked nights his entire adult life, and he genuinely preferred it. Fewer people, less noise, just him and his rounds and the predictable hum of the building's HVAC system. The warehouse stored industrial equipment, forklifts, pallets, heavy machinery, the kind of place that smells like metal and oil and cold concrete. There were no windows on the ground level, just loading bay doors and a small security office near the main entrance with a bank of monitors showing camera feeds from around the facility. Marcus did 4 rounds per shift, 1 at the start, 1 at midnight, 1 around 3 in the morning, and 1 just before dawn. He'd been doing this exact routine for months, and he knew every inch of that building. It was a Tuesday night in February. Around 2:30 in the morning, before his 3 o'clock round, he was sitting in the security office watching the monitors when he noticed something on camera 4. Camera 4 covered the back section of the warehouse, the area where they stored pallets waiting to be loaded. There was a shape. He leaned forward, thinking maybe one of the pallet stacks had shifted. It happened sometimes. Heavy pallets, leaning against each other, could slide and create strange silhouettes in the dark. But this shape wasn't coming from the pallets. It was standing between them, and it was tall. Taller than it should have been, given the ceiling height in that section, which Marcus knew was about 12 feet. He watched it for a full minute on the monitor. It didn't move. He told himself it was probably shadows, a weird angle from the camera catching the edge of a forklift arm or something. He reached for his radio, almost called it in to the dispatch, then stopped himself because he didn't want to sound like an idiot. He decided to go check it out in person. Marcus was not a man who hesitated. He grabbed his flashlight, left the security office, and walked the familiar path through the main floor of the warehouse toward the back section. He knew this walk. He'd done it hundreds of times. The building was completely silent except for the low hum of the ventilation and the soft echo of his own footsteps on the concrete. He turned the corner into the back section and swept his flashlight across the pallet stacks. Nothing there. He walked the whole section, every row between the pallets. Nothing. No forklift arms at weird angles, no fallen stacks, no explanation for what he'd seen on the camera. He went back to the security office and looked at camera 4. The shape was there again. Same spot, same height, not moving. Marcus did something that took genuine courage. He went back into the warehouse, this time with his camera on his phone recording, and walked directly to the spot on camera 4 where the shape appeared to be standing. He was standing in the exact spot. His phone was recording. He could see himself on the monitor through the security office glass. And when he watched the footage back later, you could see him standing there in the frame, flashlight swinging, looking around. But on camera 4, live, while he was standing there, the shape appeared to be standing right next to him. He didn't see anything, he didn't feel anything, but the camera was showing something standing beside him in the dark. He finished his shift without going back to that section again. He filed a report saying the camera might have a technical issue, but he told me privately that he had the footage reviewed by the security company's technical team, and they found nothing wrong with the camera. No glitch, no artifact, no explanation. He quit 2 months later. Not because of that one night, he said, but because after that night, the shape appeared on camera 4 every single shift, always in the back section, always between the pallets, always standing. He never saw it directly with his own eyes, but every camera he pointed at that spot showed the same thing. He still doesn't know what it was. This one comes from a woman named Delia, who worked as an overnight cleaner at a regional hospital for 3 years. She specifically worked the 3rd floor, which housed a long-term care wing. Most of the patients there were elderly, some with dementia, some in various stages of serious illness. Delia genuinely cared about her patients. She learned their names, spoke to them gently during her rounds, even when they were asleep, and considered the job meaningful, even though most people would find it grueling. She wants me to be clear about something before I share this. She is not a superstitious person. She grew up in a practical family. She has a scientific mind, and she had worked that floor for 2.5 years without a single strange experience before the night she's telling me about. It was a Thursday in late October. The ward was quiet. Most patients were asleep by the time Delia's shift began at 11. She was cleaning the corridor at the far end of the wing, the section with the last 6 rooms, when she heard singing. Not loud, not unsettling at first, just soft humming. Almost tuneless, coming from room 318. Room 318 had been empty for 3 weeks. The previous patient had been discharged to a different facility. The room had been cleaned, the bed was made, and it was waiting for a new admission that hadn't come yet. Delia stopped her cart and listened. She thought maybe a patient from one of the neighboring rooms had wandered in. It happened sometimes with the dementia patients. She pushed open the door to 318, expecting to find one of her regulars sitting on the empty bed, confused and needing to be guided back. The room was empty. The humming stopped the moment she opened the door. She checked every corner of the room, the bathroom, behind the door. It was a small room. There was nowhere to hide and nothing to find. She stood in the middle of that room for a long moment in complete silence, and then backed out slowly and continued her rounds. She almost convinced herself it had been sound carrying through the walls. Old hospital buildings do strange things with acoustics. She'd heard stranger. But then she got to the nursing station to sign off on the corridor cleaning log, and she saw it. The call light for room 318 was on. A soft amber light on the panel behind the nursing desk, indicating that whoever was in room 318 had pressed the call button requesting assistance. There was no one in room 318. The button would have had to be physically pressed by a human hand from inside the room for that light to activate. Delia knew the system. She'd worked with it for years. It wasn't a wireless system. It wasn't voice activated. It was a physical button mounted to a cord that hung beside the bed. She called the charge nurse on duty that night, a woman named Patricia, who had worked that floor for over a decade. Patricia came up from the second floor, looked at the call light panel, and went into 318 to check. She came back out looking pale. The call cord was wrapped around the bed rail in a specific way. Not tangled, not just loosely looped. It was deliberately wrapped, the way someone does it when they want to keep the cord from getting under the wheels of a bed they're moving. The housekeeping standard was to leave the cord hanging free. Delia knew she had left it hanging free when she cleaned that room 3 weeks ago, because that was her routine. Someone or something had arranged that cord. Patricia reset the call light. Both women finished their shifts. Neither of them spoke about it much to their coworkers. But Delia told me that Patricia, who had never mentioned anything unusual in her decade on that floor, pulled her aside at the end of the shift and said quietly, "This isn't the first time something like this has happened in that room." She didn't elaborate. Delia didn't ask her to. She still works at the hospital, but she says she always finds a reason to skip room 318 when it's empty. She doesn't clean it alone. I want you to understand something about this one before we get into it. The person who shared this story, a young man named Joel, is 23 years old and was working as an overnight attendant at a municipal parking structure in a mid-sized city. He was studying for his accounting degree during the day and working nights to pay tuition. He took this job specifically because it was quiet. Just him and the booth and the handful of late-night vehicles coming and going. He could study, he could listen to podcasts. It was supposed to be easy. The parking structure was 6 levels. Joel's booth was at the entrance on the ground floor. He had a small monitor that showed him camera feeds from each level, but the cameras were old and the image quality was poor. Grainy black and white footage that was hard to make out clearly. On a Saturday night in March, at around 1:15 in the morning, Joel heard footsteps on the level directly above the ground floor. This wasn't unusual by itself. Sometimes people parked overnight and walked through on their way out. But the sound he was hearing wasn't the sound of someone walking to an exit. It was a consistent back and forth pattern. Pacing. Long, slow, deliberate pacing. Covering what sounded like the same stretch of concrete over and over. Joel checked his entry and exit log. There had been no cars entering or exiting the structure for the past 40 minutes. The last vehicle had left at 12:37. He pulled up the camera for level 2 on his monitor. The image was grainy and dark, but he could see the empty parking bays. No cars, no visible movement. But the footsteps continued. He called out on the intercom that connected to speaker boxes on each level. "Standard security check," he said. "Is anyone in the structure? Please make your way to the exit." The footsteps stopped. 30 seconds of silence. Then they started again. Same pace, same stretch of concrete. As if whatever was up there had simply waited for him to finish speaking and then resumed. Joel was scared. He admitted that openly. He was 23, alone. It was the middle of the night, and something was walking directly above his head in an area his camera showed as empty. He called his supervisor, got voicemail, called the non-emergency police line, and was told an officer would come by when one was available. While he waited, the footsteps moved. Not down to the ground floor, not to an exit. They moved up. He could track the sound moving from level 2 to level 3, then to level 4, slow and even, like someone climbing a staircase without any urgency at all. When the sound reached level 5, it stopped. Complete silence for about 10 minutes. Then Joel heard a door. The structure had access doors on each level leading to an external stairwell. Fire escape doors, heavy metal, with a distinctive when they swung closed. He heard one of those doors open and close from somewhere above him. A few minutes later, a police officer arrived. Joel explained everything. The officer walked the structure, all 6 levels, every stairwell. Found nothing. No person. No sign of anyone having been there. But here's the part that Joel says still bothers him more than anything else. When the officer came back to the booth to wrap up, he mentioned casually that a fire escape door on level 5 was propped open. Not swinging in the wind, he said, deliberately propped open with a piece of concrete rubble, like someone had placed it there carefully. The structure's maintenance team confirmed later that no door had been propped open during their previous inspection that afternoon. Joel finished his shift that night and called in sick the next 2. He eventually went back. He worked there until he graduated, but he never stopped hearing footsteps on certain nights. Never always, not on a schedule, just sometimes. In the deep quiet of a weekend night, the pacing would start again above him. He learned to turn his podcast volume up. He never found an explanation. I told you to wait for this one. A woman named Rhea was the sole overnight employee at a small commercial print shop. This was her second job, taken on to help with some unexpected family expenses. She'd been working there for about 6 weeks when this happened. Her shift ran from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. She operated the large format printing machines, monitored jobs running through the system, and handled any urgent print orders that came in through the online portal. The shop owner came in at 7, so there was always a full hour gap where Rhea was alone in the building even after her shift technically ended. The shop was in a converted industrial building, high ceilings, large open floor plan, the constant hum and whirring of machines. It was noisy during active print jobs and eerily quiet between them. Around 2 in the morning on a Wednesday, all the active jobs finished within 20 minutes of each other, and the floor went completely silent for the first time that night. Rhea was at the front desk reviewing incoming orders when she realized the silence felt wrong. Not empty, occupied, like the quiet when someone stops talking but hasn't left the room. She looked up from her screen. At the far end of the print floor, past the large format machines and the finishing stations, there was a door that led to a storage area. The door was closed. It was always closed. The storage area contained paper stock, ink supplies, and old equipment that was no longer in use. Rhea had been back there once in her 6 weeks of employment, briefly, to find a specific paperweight. She had no reason to go back there at night. The door had a small rectangular window in it, a standard commercial door window, wired glass, about head height. From where Rhea was sitting at the front desk, that window was a small pale rectangle in the distance, faintly reflecting the light from the print floor. There was a face in it. She told me she saw it clearly for about 3 seconds before she looked away on instinct. A face, pressed close to the glass, looking out at the print floor from inside the storage room. Rhea did not move. She sat completely still at the front desk, and she told me that in that moment, her body made the decision before her brain did. Do not move. Do not draw attention. Just sit still. After about a minute, she looked back at the door. The window was just a pale rectangle again. She thought immediately about what a practical person should do. Was someone in the building? Had someone come in during the day and gotten locked inside by accident? Was this a break-in? She reached for her phone, called 911, kept her voice low and flat, and told them she believed there might be an intruder in the building. Police arrived within 8 minutes. She met them at the front door and walked them through the print floor to the storage room. The officers opened the storage door. The room was empty. No hiding places significant enough to conceal a person. The storage room had shelving units along the walls, stacks of paper, supply boxes on the floor. The officers moved everything, checked behind every shelf. One of them even pushed stacks of paper aside to check the back corners. Nobody was there. There was no other exit from the storage room. One door, one window high on the wall, too small and too high to be a functional exit. No crawl spaces, no vents large enough for a person. The officers told her it was probably a reflection in the glass, the light playing off the window from an unusual angle. They were kind about it. They didn't dismiss her. They just offered her a rational explanation, and she appreciated that. She almost accepted it. Except for the smell. When the officers opened the storage room door and she stepped inside with them, there was a smell in that room that she couldn't identify and couldn't explain. Not a chemical smell, not a machine smell. She described it to me as organic, warm, the way a room smells when someone has been standing in it for a long time. Body heat. That's what she kept coming back to when she tried to describe it. The room smelled like body heat. The officers didn't comment on the smell. Maybe they didn't notice it, or maybe they didn't think it was worth mentioning. They cleared the building, walked the perimeter, found nothing. They left at around 2:45. Rhea went back to the front desk. She had 3 hours left in her shift. She sat with her back to the wall, facing the print floor, and she did not take her eyes off that door for the remainder of the night. At 6 in the morning, when the owner arrived, she told him what had happened. She expected him to echo what the police had said about reflections and light. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he told her that the person who had worked her shift before her, a man named Dennis, who had held the position for almost 2 years, had quit without notice about 8 weeks before Rhea started. He'd sent a text message to the owner at 3 in the morning saying he wasn't coming back and he'd left his keys in the mailbox. The owner had assumed burnout, long nights, isolated work. He'd seen it before. He'd never asked Dennis what actually happened. Rhea asked the owner if he had a number for Dennis. He did. She called Dennis herself, introduced herself, explained she was working his old shift. There was a pause on the line. Then Dennis asked her if she'd seen the face in the storage room window. She didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. He already knew. He told her he'd seen it 4 times over his 2 years at the shop, always between 2 and 4 in the morning, always on a quiet night when the machines weren't running, always that same window. He said the last time he saw it was the night he quit. He said that night the face didn't just look out at him from the glass the way it usually did. That night, it smiled. He said he couldn't tell her anything more than that because there wasn't anything more to tell. He'd never found an explanation. He'd never seen anything in that storage room when he investigated. But after it smiled at him, he made a decision in about 15 seconds and never went back. Rhea gave her 2 weeks' notice the next day. She's working a different second job now, daytime hours. She told me she doesn't regret the decision for a single second. She also told me one last thing. When she called Dennis, when he described what the face looked like, she realized something that she hadn't wanted to admit to herself. The detail she'd pushed to the back of her mind because it didn't fit cleanly into any category of explainable or unexplainable. The face she saw in that window, pressed against the glass in the middle of the night in a room the police found completely empty, was not looking around the print floor. It was not scanning the room. It was not looking toward the exits or the machines or the lights. It was looking directly at her. Across the entire length of the print floor, through the distant rectangle of that small wired glass window, whatever was in that storage room had its eyes fixed on exactly where she was sitting. It had known she was there before she ever looked up. Let that sit with you for a second. 4 people. 4 completely ordinary workplaces. A warehouse, a hospital, a parking structure, a print shop. The kind of places you pass every day without thinking about who might be inside them at 3 in the morning. The kind of places where the lights stay on all night and someone is always there alone, doing a job that most of the world is asleep through. What is it about the night that changes things? Marcus would tell you it's not the darkness itself, it's the absence of witnesses. When you're the only one there, you're the only one who can confirm what did or didn't happen. And that cuts both ways. It means no one can tell you you're wrong about what you saw. But it also means no one can stand beside you and say, yes, I see it too. Delia would tell you that hospitals hold things other buildings don't. Years of pain and fear and last moments don't just evaporate. She's never claimed to know what exactly is in room 318. She just knows she's not willing to find out. Joel would probably shrug and tell you he still doesn't know what was pacing above him that night. And at this point, he's made peace with not knowing. Some things don't have answers. He has his accounting degree now. He works 9 to 5. He says he sleeps better than he ever did working nights, and he doesn't think that's a coincidence. And Rhea would tell you that the thing that sticks with her most isn't the face. It's not even the smell of body heat in an empty room. It's the phone call with Dennis. The confirmation that she wasn't the first person to see it. That it had been there for at least 2 years before she ever walked through that door. Patient, quiet, returning to that window between 2 and 4 in the morning and looking out. Waiting. For what? She doesn't know. Dennis doesn't know. And whatever it was in that storage room, it apparently doesn't feel the need to explain itself. These 4 people went to work. They did their jobs. They experienced something that permanently changed the way they think about empty buildings and darkness and the strange weight of being the only person in a large space at night. None of them wanted to see what they saw. None of them went looking for it. It found them. And here's the thing that I keep coming back to when I sit with these stories. Every single one of these experiences shares one common thread. The moment before everything changed was completely ordinary. Marcus was sitting at a security desk looking at monitors. Delia was cleaning a hallway. Joel was studying in a booth. Rhea was reviewing orders at a front desk. Normal, routine, unremarkable. The ordinary is what makes these stories terrifying to me in a way that overtly dramatic horror never quite achieves. Because it means there's no warning. There's no atmosphere shift you can point to and say, that's when I should have known. One moment, everything is exactly as it should be, and then in the next moment, it isn't, and there is no going back to the before. You just have to finish your shift. If you're someone who works nights, I hope tonight is quiet. I hope your monitors show nothing unusual, your corridors stay empty, your levels above you stay still, and your doors stay exactly the way you left them. I hope the silence around you stays the comfortable kind, the empty kind. But if something feels different tonight, if the quiet feels occupied, if you look up from what you're doing and find your eyes drawn somewhere they shouldn't be, trust that feeling. These 4 people all described the same instinct in the seconds before things went sideways. A sudden awareness, a certainty that something had changed even before they could identify what it was. Marcus called it combat instinct. His body knew before his brain processed the camera image. Delia called it professional intuition, something in her that had spent thousands of hours on that floor, suddenly registering that tonight was different. Joel called it his stomach dropping, a physical response to information he hadn't consciously received yet. Rhea just called it knowing. She looked up because she knew. And then she saw. Whatever it is that wakes up in us when we're alone in the dark and something isn't right. These 4 people are grateful they had it. Even Marcus, who says he's still not sure what the shape on camera 4 actually was, says he's glad his body made him walk that floor twice instead of once. Because whatever it was, he saw it. He documented it. He has the footage. It can't tell him it wasn't there. That's 4 stories, 4 real nights, 4 ordinary people who are now the only witnesses to something they can't explain. If you have your own story, something that happened on a night shift or in an empty building or in any of those long hours that most of the world sleeps through, I genuinely want to hear it. Leave it in the comments. Read the ones other people share. You might be surprised how not alone you are in this. Which of these 4 hit closest to home for you? I'll be honest, it's Rhea's for me. It's always Rhea's. The idea that whatever was in that room already knew where she was sitting before she ever looked up is something I'm going to be thinking about for a very long time. New stories every week. I'll see you in the next one. Try not to work alone tonight.